Morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. This is AltDev the Student Summit. We're starting up day 2 now, and we're kicking off the day with the AltDev Student Showcase. This is session 2 of the showcase. The showcase is sponsored by Unity, and we thank them for the support. And that means that our contestants today are competing for the right to take home with them a copy of Unity Pro, a commercial license for that. So we'll just go around and introduce the panel. If we can start with Claire, please.
I'm Claire Blackshaw. I'm a technical designer at Climax Studios here in Portsmouth, UK.
Next up, Marcus.
I'm Marcus Montgomery. I'm a game designer of 15 years, formerly at Backbone Entertainment, and now I am freelance.
I'm Mike Acton. I'm engine director at Insomniac Games, can
anybody else hear Mike?
No, we lost him.
Okay.
I heard Mike.
Let's go on to Pier and see if Mike's microphone pops back in.
Okay, my name is Pier Tortorelli. I'm Italian, but at the moment I'm in UK. I'm an associate producer for Ubisoft Reflections in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Awesome. So the way things are going to work is we're going to bring the contestants in one at a time. They'll have 5 minutes to pitch their project. The panel will then have 10 minutes to cross-examine them, and then we'll move on to the next one. So we're going to be starting out with a project called Caravan, and that should be Manuel. So can you hear us?
Okay, so hello. Does the microphone work?
You're back on. Your 5 minutes starts now.
Okay, thanks. So hello and welcome. My name is Manuel Scherer, and during the next 5 minutes I'm going to tell you a little bit about our game Caravan. So I'm switching to screen share now. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Does that work? Okay, great. So just a brief history about the team. So we are 3 devs and 1 business person. We've worked together in several projects over the past on the university level, and each of us has at least 1 year of industry experience, and additional experience includes being book authors in game development, freelancers, and working as teachers on the university level. So let's jump directly into what Caravan is before we see the trailer. So in a nutshell, Caravan is a third-person exploration game developed for the PC with Unity 3D, obviously. And it is themed around water shortage in the desert. And the player experience we're really aiming for is achieving something together in an environment. So we'll get back to that just after watching the trailer. So to sum it all up, for the last minute, I think you've probably seen enough. The game, so really about the USP and what we're trying to achieve. So like you saw, it's about going to the desert with a shortage of water, and it is really about, like you saw at the end of the video, about achieving something together. So if you die or fail in that world, you will always leave something behind for the next person to pick up at that point. So that's really the spirit of the game. So we're really trying to make each play meaningful for other players in the world. So every time you fail, another one can continue where you failed. So really synchronize that across the entire game. So that's really the core idea. So I think that's it. I'm through. Thank you for your attention. And now we're ready for the Q&A session.
Excellent. Spot on timing. Okay, so let's start out. Claire, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I mean, you say it's centered around group play, but I assume this is fully I assume this is fully asynchronous play. There's no actual live multiplayer in it. Is there any way for a player to leave their mark on the world other than just leaving their corpse?
We're really trying to implement that in the future. So at the moment, as totally correct, it's really like what we call massive offline multiplayer. So really playing this as a single player game, but experiencing what others have done in that world. So we were in the first prototype, we were thinking about signs and leaving messages there, or maybe hints to other players. But at the moment, we're really only going with the corpse idea, because if we really look at it, it has several meanings. So not only that you can think of it like a power-up, but if you see that there maybe 10 players failed at that point, it's like a hint in itself. So you understand there's something dangerous maybe there. So it really is it operates at many levels. But we thought about that, so that will be maybe a feature in the future.
And then the only other question I had was, you said the design's all about water shortage. Are the resource nodes, do the resource nodes deplete, or is there any change in the nature to the level or the design of the levels as play progresses?
At the moment, we're heading for like a dual-wheeled approach. So we have like oasis where you can always replenish your water, but we're also aiming for points like fruit trees or smaller water holes that, like in the database, have sort of fields or lives, you could say. So if 10 players use that oasis, the water will be depleted, and maybe only after 5 or 10 hours on the server side will be replenished again, so another player can continue there. So really like having both of it in the world.
And then finally, are there any challenges that you specifically want to call out that you overcame during this process?
I think at the moment the most challenging thing was, I think, technically and from the concept side. So technically it was building like a huge area in Unity. That was really a technical challenge, because Unity really isn't made for vast outside landscapes. It really works better in closed rooms, and things work better that way. The other thing was we were doing a game on the conceptual side that wasn't primarily a shooter or primarily an RTS, so we didn't have like features we could hang on to, like people would easily understand. So that was really a challenge to make the world playable, or at least understand it as a game. Even that was at the beginning quite hard. So I think these were the two main challenges we overcome, I hope.
Yep.
Okay, Marcus, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to be clear about the die and revive mechanic. So when someone dies, you pick up where their corpse is?
So if someone dies, technically he will leave something like a corpse or a grave or like a water bottle there, which is written into the database, and every time another player loads up the game, all the spots will be pulled into that game, and you will get all the spots generated in your game, so you can pick them up.
Okay, but you start not at that corpse. You start at the normal start location. You have to travel to that corpse.
Definitely. You strictly seen, you wouldn't actually need to use the corpses. I mean, it's base gameplay. It works that way because it's easier if you pick them up like power-ups. But you could walk through the desert without it.
So what are the other resources that the corpse has? I mean, right now it's just a water bottle. Or are there other things like keys or torches or whatever?
At the moment, yes, we thought about that. At the moment, they are only having water, but we're planning to implement is like they have bits of maps in there. Like you saw in the video, you have this map, you can scroll and things like that. So we're planning that each corpse, for sure you can't see the entire map from the beginning, you have to explore it. And each corpse has like a snippet of a map in it. So if you get that to that player, you get a little bit of his experience of the map. So you can get important locations or things like that from the corpses.
So what is the overall objective? Are you traveling to a particular location, or is it just to explore the world and expand the map?
Yes, it's actually getting out of the desert, like reaching the green spots or getting out of the dry land, basically, to find out what happened to make this land that dry. So it's a little bit of backstory involved.
Okay. And one last question about how much work do you feel you have left in your product?
We started with the concept, I think, around 1 year ago with a concept paper, and I think we have like 9 to 12 months to go, I think. So we are like at the alpha stage currently, so I think about a year should be realistic, hopefully.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. I just want to say, initially, I found it very gorgeous, very striking. Shadow of the Colossus meets Journey meets Prince of Persia. It's kind of cool.
That's pretty interesting because that was exactly the statement we built it upon. Shadow of the Colossus meets Journey. So interesting.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, Mike next, please.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So speaking of Journey, the comparisons with Journey are pretty clear, right? So I guess the question is, how do you go from being inspired by Journey to sort of getting past those questions of is it Journey? Is it different than Journey? How is it like Journey? Right? How do you get past those questions? How are you guys planning or have thought of getting past that so that it's not a question of are you as good as Journey, but are you your own game?
Definitely a good question. We've talked very, very much about that. So I think the main difference in Caravan is really the gameplay. So like it has to deal with water into the desert. So it means there are plants, there's water, there are water holes. And on the gameplay side, it's more like the game is like if you feel it, it's harder. Like Journey, it's not that you go through the level, but you can explore really freely around in the world. You can go in each direction. It's not a fixed level. And it's really about achieving something in a community. You really see where other players were and what they did and where they died maybe and what's hard about the game. So it's really about that experience, what we're heading for, about exploring. And another thing we're planning to implement, I mean, not like we're trying to overload it with features, but we're trying to implement living things in the world. We call them spirits. So just to make so there will be like plants in the desert and inhabitants. So that's visually the two main things that differentiate it from Journey if you look at it from a world perspective.
What would you say is the what are you trying to say? What's your sort of voice of your development team? What's the actual thing you would like to express to the players?
Actually, that's something like the play should be like in a society. So if you do something, like in science, for example, if you do something, you always build upon what others left for you. So you work through what they did, and based upon that, you go one step further. And really, that's what we think, what society or science maybe is about. So that's really what we're trying to do with that game. Like one can achieve, no one can achieve it on its own. It's really building upon other experience and place. So that's the core idea of it.
What do you think is the best expression of that core idea in your game?
You mean, what do you mean by that? Like gameplay or?
Yeah, what's so far in what you've done so far, where do you think you've really hit that note the best?
I think the greatest impact happens when a player comes to a point like he's encountering, for example, quicksand, which is really hard to spot in the desert, and that's by design. And you see that at the line where the quicksand starts, they're piling up points where other players fail. So really, you get into that point, and it really strikes you that you can suddenly see like 50 players' destiny rolled up before you. So you really know what happened there. You get like a backstory that unravels at that point. I think that's really the emotional impact, the most emotional thing in the game you can encounter.
Okay, well, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Pierre, you're up last. According to the clock, you've got 10 seconds, but take a bit longer if you want.
Okay, so I'll focus on my main question. Let's talk a bit about production. You said at the beginning you are 3 developers and 1 business man. How do you, which kind of developers you have?
What do you mean by which kind? So which are the roles involved?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
Okay, so we have like 1 true programming guy who's doing the back-end, server side, and really the tough technical stuff. And the other 2, including me, are 1, let's say, like technical artist, so he's doing on the art side, but he's really also doing the game programming. And on my side, I'm doing all the art side and also design and project management. So that's like an indie team. If you have 3 guys or 2 guys doing all that stuff, it's like wearing many hats.
Yep.
Always the same.
Okay. Another question is, which is the target audience you're aiming to?
The target audience is like experienced gamers, so they are not new to the field. They know what gaming is, and like we all know, the average gamer these days, I think it's 37 years old, something like that. So we're really aiming for players who know games, but who have other values in their life. Like, I mean, if people are 37 years old, maybe they have kids, they have family, and there are other values in their life, like community or helping each other or things like that, which is not in the normal mind of a 14-year-old boy, actually. So we're really heading for a more mature audience with that.
Okay. And the world you are creating is something which is fixed. So it means that once you manage to get out of the desert, you won't be able to replay anything because it will be the same.
That's true. Initially, we went for a procedural approach. So we had like 3 iterations on the world design. So we wrote another level editor which could generate the chunks of the desert and put it all together. Mm-hmm. But in the end and in the time frame, it just didn't work out. It would be procedural, but the quality of the level couldn't keep up with what we could build by hand. So we decided to leave that out and take the made by hand approach.
Okay, so how long do you think will take for an average player to finish the game, to get out of the desert?
I think the gameplay time, since we're only 3 people and this should really have a high quality of level design, I think we're heading for something around 1 or maximum 2 hours of gameplay. So really not trying to achieve more. Okay.
But is it in your plan, I mean, if everything goes as it should, is it in your plan to expand it?
Do you mean expansion pack or deliver a bigger world or things like that?
Yes.
Actually, I don't think so. I think it's like an indie game. I think we would like to make that statement and make it clear and making as good as we can. And I think expanding it would I think the message would be stretched. Like if you have poetry and you just write it double the length, it won't be stronger if you're heading for emotional impact. So I think actually not.
Okay. My last question, otherwise you will kill me.
But it's okay, because in the next one you're going first, so you can take all the time.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Caravan, Manuel, I guess.
Thanks.
So thank you very much. And next up, we have Jungle.com. Can you hear us, Alec?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, so that's ideal.
Great.
Right,
Well, I'm
5
going to
minutes
set up
starts
some
now.
slides. And can you see my slides?
Yes.
Good. Well, my name is Alec Thompson, and I'm here today to present Jungle.com to you guys. First, a little bit about who our team is. As you heard, my name is Alec Thompson. I'm a master's student at MIT in the computer science department. Everything I learned about making games was taught to me by the MIT. What's up?
We're not seeing you click through your slides.
So you can't see anything?
No, if you just drop back into PowerPoint, you'll move through them manually.
Okay. Right on. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, we can see the screen. So if you just move through them in the screen, then that's fine.
Okay, cool. Well, as I was saying, I'm Alec Thompson, master's student at MIT in the computer science department. Everything I know about making games was taught to me by the MIT Game Lab, and I am the programmer and designer on Jungle.com. Allison Malouf is an undergraduate at MIT in the architecture department, and she's the artist on Jungle.com. So my basic plan is I'm going to spiel about the game for a little bit, and then I'm going to show you a short demo. So let's get started. Jungle.com, what is it? Well, at its heart, Jungle.com is a game about breaking into and robbing Amazon.com in their massive office headquarters. And the only help you get while doing this is tools that you order off of Amazon.com, which derive instant delivery, of course, because you're right there. Now, since Amazon.com is a real large and legally well-endowed corporation, we had to change the name to something else. So the name we chose was Jungle.com, which of course allowed us to then staff our fictional office with jungle animals. So here's a screenshot from the game itself. Your character is this monkey over here in the center, and as you might be able to tell from my poorly written tutorial text, one of the primary mechanics of the game is picking up these various boxes that litter the office and using them to escape attention of these carnivorous middle managers down here. And at any time in the game, you can go ahead and open up the in-game Jungle.com and purchase new tools to help you get through the levels. So the game is a procedurally generated game. It was originally envisioned as a stealth roguelike, and as you can see here, some procedural generation code and tools that I use. One of the fun things about the procedural generation in Jungle.com is that it's actually driven by the players. So there's this global share price that the company has in the game that's affected by what the player does. So if the player does things like destroying stuff willy-nilly, the share price will go down. But if the player, on the other hand, does silly things like trapping these tigers next to desks, then the share price goes up because productivity increased or something. And this share price actually has an effect on how levels will be generated. So if the player increases the share price, more money might be littered around the fictional office, or at the same time, more tigers might be there to catch them. So this has actually led well to emergent gameplay inside Jungle.com, and my favorite example of this was actually when I was originally prototyping the game. I was under the impression there was no way for the player to harm these enemies at all, because I hadn't programmed it in. It was a pure stealth game, basically. But I soon discovered there was actually a perfectly self-consistent way for the player to get enemies to attack each other. And I thought that was awesome. So ever since then, I have been designing those kinds of interactions into the game as much as possible, creating items that will do various things to get the enemies to behave in strange ways, basically to maximize emergent gameplay as much as possible and create a really fun and unexpected experience.
Before we go on with the next exercise, I'd like to make one of my little speeches. This is your first course in preparing for an office job. It can be fun, or it can be hard. Well,
Okay, so moving on to questions now, and going in reverse order from what we did before. So Pierre, you're up first.
Yep. Hello, Alec. Yes.
Yep.
So you've been talking a lot about this emergent gameplay that you are implementing or implemented in the game. How many different elements can happen? How many times you can mix things? You said you can have the animals fight between them. You can create events. The player can create events. How many of these do you have in the game?
Well, it's difficult to quantify, given that I'm still finding unexpected ones happening during playtest, which are still completely consistent, so that's pretty nice. But the basic actions in the game that the player can do is they can lift things, and they can move around and hide and use items on other things, right? And so any one of these can be combined in some kind of way. Like, for instance, if there's a wall, then a wall is actually just a box, which I gave a higher weight score. So if the player does something to make themselves stronger, they can get past the wall that way. On the other hand, if the player, say, makes the enemy think the wall is the player, then the enemy will go destroy the wall for the player or something like that. So that's two different ways you could say get past that sort of basic obstacle. Or it might be a wall that's like actually a locked door, and the player can find a key lying around somewhere and lift up the key and push that into the wall to get rid of it, that kind of thing. So I can't really quantify exactly how many interactions there are like this, but I did try to design the code in such a way that it's really easy to add new interactions like that.
Okay. No, I definitely like the idea. Trying to find new ways to do things with what's available is the basis of every sandbox, every sand game. Okay. So I suppose the only way, you only use keys to move around, or you use the mouse as well?
It's completely keyboard at the moment. I would personally like for it to be a game that interacts with the gamepad. Unfortunately, this current prototype is written in ActionScript, so one of the things I've been considering is porting the game to Unity, which is very gamepad friendly, because I feel like it would do well with a gamepad. Okay,
and you are thinking about keeping the same graphical style?
Actually, Allison really wants to take away the pixel art. It was mainly chosen for speed rather than aesthetics. She wants to paint everything.
That's an interesting choice.
But the nice thing about it is that it's really easy to do a palette swap in the game. So if she's willing to do all that work, then it's really easy to just put it in.
Okay, and so 2 developers only, you and her. And how much time it's remaining on the project?
I would say about half a year on the project, given that we're both current students at the moment. The project was initially concepted and prototyped during July, and the majority of the development happened in July and August, and then school started, and we've been doing it at about a half development time. And I would say, given that constraint, there's probably about 6 months left to go before I would consider it ready for release.
Okay, and how many hours of playtest have you chucked at it?
Man hours, or actually, yeah, I guess, so we showcased it at the Boston Festival of Indie Games recently, and had a good 12 hours of just people playing it all day, so we definitely got a lot of playtest information from that. And prior to that, I basically showed it to everyone I could and got as much feedback as I could, so I'd say anywhere from like 14 to 24 playtest hours in total.
Okay. Yeah, the only difficult thing I can see here is stop when the time comes, because after each playtest, I can imagine you have been having lots of feedbacks and new ideas, and you have been inserting them in the game, so you will definitely need a good plan and stop at a certain point. Yeah. This is kind of my personal feedback about that. But anyway, I'll pass the ball now. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Mike, you're up next, please.
Alec, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So let me start with asking you the question: What's the point? What's your point? Why are you making this game?
Basically, I wanted to make a roguelike. My research at MIT is about procedural puzzles and their use in design. And I was like, I've never made a roguelike, so I would like to make a roguelike to see what it's like. And I decided I didn't want to make a traditional one. I wanted to make one where the player couldn't do any damage. It'd be stealth completely. it sort of just emerged from there, and I basically just want to make a really fun, procedurally generated roguelike with kind of a quirky narrative and theme.
So, from a research point of view, as a research platform, what are you bringing that's new, and two, what are you expecting to learn when you come out of this?
Well, actually, so this game is not my research. It's not actually connected to my research. It's just something I did because I wanted to learn a little bit more about the subject matter that does concern my research. My research is like for procedurally generated adventure point-and-click games, so it's a little bit separate. So this isn't really a research platform for me, but I did kind of want to learn some of the, I guess, design decisions and choices and concerns that go into using procedural generation and developing a game like this. And some of the things I have learned is basically how to use probability distributions in certain ways to like get certain results. So certainly at the beginning I wasn't expecting the amount of variance that uniform probability distributions tend to give you. So I had to do a few additional things to mitigate that, use like skewed probability distributions or just put caps on certain things that get spawned. So it's definitely a good learning tool in that sense. I don't know if that answers your question.
All right. From you mentioned that you guys were thinking about changing the aesthetic of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So how does what you are thinking about reflect the gameplay itself?
In terms of changing the aesthetic?
Yeah. How does the goal? See, one thing that you have right now is you have this sort of this pixel art that predates the company that you are parodying, right? But if you're considering changing that, how does that change the aesthetic of the game itself?
Well, basically, if we do change it, one of the nice things is we can make the in-game look a little bit more like a modern Amazon.com, right? We can take our pixelated in-game store and sort of look a little bit more like the Amazon website. And the aesthetic we're trying to play up is basically a combination of Office and Jungle, right? And I feel like there's a lot of interesting things you can do with painted style on the Jungle side of things. I'm not personally an artist, so I don't know exactly how that would mesh with the Office side of things, but it's definitely something we want to experiment with.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Cool. Marcus, you're up next, please.
I just had questions. I was watching the demo, and it looked like the monkey would walk in front of some of the enemies, and they wouldn't react. Was there particular reasons why they were moving around, or when they react? How does that work?
So that was actually a design decision where initially it used to be the moment the monkey walked into their field of vision, the enemies would react immediately. And it was actually pretty annoying compared to the way it works now, which is you have to be within their field of vision for a certain amount of time before they notice you. And that was actually a number that we tweaked and did a lot of iteration and playtesting on to figure out what felt best, at least to players and as well as to ourselves. So.
Okay, so you can run past them and they wouldn't react.
Yes, you can run past them. In certain situations, you can run past them and they won't react, such as if you're only running through one square of their field of vision or something.
Right, okay. So I think this was somewhat mentioned before, but are there certain classes objects, or is it just that the character interacts with, or is it just more that every object has a certain set of unique properties that allows them to manipulate things?
Well, every object is inherited from a base object, which defines all the unique properties that objects tend to have. And then the objects themselves can further define certain things, such as each object knows what it considers an enemy, what it doesn't consider an enemy, which other objects it can walk on top of, that kind of thing. It's actually, the way they handle that is each object has a set of types, and instead of giving them a single type, you give them multiple types. So for instance, the player has like player type and the enemy has enemy type, but boxes might have like box type and wall type or something, and the player can do things like spray stuff with player scent, and then it gets a player type, and then enemies will go attack that. And it's basically sort of to really facilitate interesting interactions that can arise.
Okay. One more question. What is your platform that you're going to be focusing on?
The platform for this at the moment is PC only, because this is an ActionScript version of the game. If I were to port it to Unity, I would definitely consider looking at consoles, whatever Unity provides there. That's the nice thing about it, is it's so cross-platform. But for now, it's basically PC.
Okay. I have one other thing, but it slipped my mind, so I'll just pass it on.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
Claire, you're up for one very quick one, please, or a couple of quick ones.
So very quickly, the share price you mentioned, is that shared across multiple games, or is it unique to every single person's game?
It's unique to each individual game.
Oh, okay. So how do you feel? I mean, obviously you're doing this for fun and just learning, but how do you feel about, in any PCG, there's going to be exploits that come out really easily. How do you feel about when the player uses your procedural generation to break the game, or deviant play patterns?
Well, if they manage to use it to do so in a really interesting way, such that, like, I didn't think of that, that's really clever, I'm totally all for it. I have no problem with it. If it's more that they discover a way to get it to crash the game, well, I'm not so happy about that. Actually, there's a good example of this that happened during a playtest. So originally, the share price, you could get it to drop to 0, and then in between levels, the player has the option of buying and selling shares. And I had a playtester who dropped the share price to 0, finished the level, then bought a hodgillion shares for no money, and then in the next level raised the share price to $1, and then sold all the shares, and then had a ton of money, and that was really funny. Except I decided that should probably not ultimately be allowed. So now the way it works is that the elevator, which is the exit to each level, will not open if the share price is 0 because their electricity got cut off. So that was my solution to that. But it's really fun seeing players come up with those kinds of exploits. So I'm not very distressed by them.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Thank you very much. So thanks to the panelists, and thank you, Alec.
Yep.
So we are now in with our final team, and these are the guys from Polyphobia. So
yes,
take it away, guys.
Can you guys hear us?
We can.
Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to start off by introducing the team. We are Lost Penguin Studios. We are third-year undergraduate game development students at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology in Oshawa, Canada. And our game is called Polyphobia. So Polyphobia is a third-person action-adventure platformer that is being developed for the PC. It takes place in the strange dream world of a young boy. So our players will take on the role of a boy named Jimmy Jones that has experienced a traumatizing event in his recent past. The event that he can no longer recall has started to trigger a bunch of development of numerous phobias that haunt Jimmy every night in his dreams. So now, using the power of lucid dreaming, Jimmy must enter a dream state in order to battle his fears, conquer them, and ultimately recall the event that triggered his polyphobia. So to give you guys a better idea of our game, I'm going to go ahead and show off a YouTube video. But before I do that, I'm going to just let you guys know that I'd just like to mention that this game has been under development for only 6 weeks, so I'd just like you guys to take that into account when you're looking at what we have here. And without further ado, I'll start the screen share first.
Our artists collaborated to come up with a congruent overall style of concept art. We veered toward a cartoonish art style that would contrast with the dark themes of our story. For inspiration, we looked to examples like Tim Burton films and Naughty Bear. We wanted to create this opposition deliberately. This unsettling contrast makes significant things stand out more and draws more attention to the game. Our main character is named Jimmy Jones, a young boy of 6. We chose this age because we believe that people are more empathetic to younger characters. We believe players wanted to care about their character and what happens to him. Jimmy begins his journey nervous and afraid, but as he learns to fight his fears, he discovers his own capacity for bravery.
Our first level describes and personifies a cluophobia, the fear of darkness. This level will contain very limited lighting. This allows us, the developers, to place key light sources throughout the level to provide clues and help navigate the player. At the start of the level, Jimmy is provided with a flashlight. This illuminates dark areas and slows certain enemies throughout the game.
The following level revolves around acrophobia, the fear of heights. This level takes place in a massive frozen underground cave with narrow rocky paths and high drops. Certain areas of the level will be frozen over and introduce a threat of slipping over the edge. Jimmy receives the yo-yo here.
This tool allows you to swing across gaps, pull items and enemies towards you, as well as stun larger enemies. The fear that our third level is based on is astrophobia, the fear of storms. In this level, Jimmy will be traversing stormy skies that are filled with many dangers, such as heavy rain, lightning, and strong winds. Numerous cloud platforms will also make this possible. Obtaining a rocket pack in this level will make Jimmy's life a bit easier. This unique backpack allows him to fly across large gaps, avoid certain obstacles, and burn selected enemies. This level will portray claustrophobia, the fear of enclosed spaces. Here, Jimmy is faced with walls on all sides as he navigates through an enormous hedge maze. This gives the illusion of entrapment and imprisonment, helping represent the phobia. The odd patch of mud will help slow Jimmy's pace through the maze. The hammer is discovered inside this grand puzzle. This tool allows Jimmy to break through certain walls. The hammer's attack will be much more effective than the normal melee attack.
The final level of our game will revolve around pyrophobia, the fear of fire. To defend himself in this dream, Jimmy will be given the water balloon. The setting of this level will be Jimmy's flaming home. To give the player a sense of urgency, flames will constantly chase Jimmy, threatening to engulf him.
The last tool given to Jimmy is the water balloon. This allows him to extinguish flames that block his path. It can also be used to push things such as enemies or buttons that are out of reach.
Jimmy's bedroom is the game's central hub and acts as the player's lobby. Different items in Jimmy's room act as triggers to initiate different levels. Jimmy looks at the item to examine it and then goes to sleep to start a level. In the room is Jimmy's toy box that contains all the items he can use. As well, the room contains his closet, a picture hanging on the wall, and a window. Such items are the triggers that lead to the dream sequences.
Okay, so that was our project, what we have so far. We've been programming it in Havoc with animations and Ogre 3D with C++. At the moment, we're not too far in gameplay as we're just trying to load everything in right now. We've been working on this for about 6 weeks, as I said before, and in the future we plan to have co-op implemented, as well as 12 more months roughly to work on it. During the summer months is when we plan to have most of our production done, mainly because we're going to deal with our school projects first, and hopefully we'll have it done.
I'm afraid. Okay, so I'm sorry, but we're going to have to get into the questions now. Can we start with Mike?
Get past me, Luke.
Okay, Claire's next, please.
So, what is the main reason for switching to Unity for you guys?
Because we're early in development, we feel that Unity would help us really push forward a lot faster in this project and get it out to the market. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I lost your audio there. What was your answer there for the last bit?
Sorry, UOIT still owns our intellectual property, so by having Unity, we can push out a similar spiritual successor to our game really quickly.
Really, that's all I had at the moment.
Okay, Pierre, you're up next.
Yep. How many people?
There are 5 of us.
Okay. And how are you divided? Which roles?
Pardon?
Which roles do you cover?
We have 2 modelers, 2 programmers, and an art director.
Okay. Which is doing the graphics as well?
Pardon?
Which is doing the rest of the graphic as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And how much time do you plan to spend on this game?
12 months.
Okay, okay. Do you already have a rough idea of the user interface you're going to use?
Yeah, we do. We have that drawn out already. We just didn't include it in our video.
Okay, so everything is already set up and good to go, kind of approved.
Yeah, we finished all our design 2 weeks ago.
Okay. No, at the moment it's all for me.
Okay.
Okay, Marcus, you're up next.
You said that you had 2 modelers, an art director, and 2 engineers. Is that correct?
2 programmers, yes.
2 programmers. Do you have any animators on that project, or some people double for that?
I myself am animating, and I'll be getting help from people if I need it.
Okay. So you mentioned that in each level there's a new weapon introduced that was specifically to deal with the themes of the phobia. How are those weapons, or
Hang on, Marcus. I think we've started the video again.
Yeah, we lost the sound for that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I was saying you guys have a new weapon that's planned to be utilized in each new phobia that's unique to that phobia to address the issues and constraints of that particular fear. Are those weapons going to be utilized in all the other phobia realms, or are they just unique to that particular phobia?
Yes, they'll be carried over. In our final level, which is the fire level, we have smoke effects and gaps in the floor and stuff that you need to use the flashlight to see through the smoke and the yo-yo to get across gaps and things like that.
Okay, so and it's a linear path through the levels. Like it's going to be, you had to start off with darkness, then to height, to storms, then claustrophobia, then fear. It's in that order. You're not going to be able to tackle a Mega Man style, like I can go to the fear fire level first and then come back to the other ones.
You can after you beat it with the lobby system that we developed, where Jimmy will be laying in his bed, and to select a level, you'll just look around at different key things like the window or the closet door, and that will relate to the fear that you want to play.
And then you can take all the previous weapons you've unlocked into that newer.
Yep.
Okay. And your target platform?
Our target platform at the moment is PC, but we're hoping to develop for the Xbox Live Arcade as well, and iOS.
And this is third-person action-adventure. Is it like a over-the-shoulder chase cam, Mario 64-esque? Okay.
Think Banjo-Kazooie meets Psychonauts, basically.
Okay, cool. That's all I have.
Okay, Mike, do you want to jump in at this point?
Yeah, I just have one question, guys. What is it that you want to see happen?
We're really hoping to have this out and to get our name heard about. UOIT is...
The video started up again. We've lost your audio.
Is that good?
Collaborated to come up with it.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now. Start over again.
Okay. We're a new school at UOIT. Getting a lot of feedback. Okay, UOIT still has a lot to prove, so we want to use this game to get UOIT and our own name out there, so that we basically have a lot of proof, and we want this to be our push forward.
Okay, well, what is it that you want people to take away, though, specifically? What do you want to prove?
We just want people to enjoy our game and to see that Canadian developers, specifically Canadian student developers, have a lot to show them.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you to the Polyphobia team. So the time has come for the judges to judge.
Thank you.
We've had 3 panelists, 3 contestants come in and pitch their games, but there can only be one winner. But I think that it's important to recognise that just having the sort of ambition to come and try and put their game forward means that they're probably not losers all round, the guys who don't win. So, Starting in a different order to what we have done previously. Marcus, what are your impressions? Who do you think should win?
Let's see. You know, initially for me, I liked every project. I think everyone has a little bit of a hook that I think is unique. The Caravan was very striking to me. Initially, I can see where it's going. It's a very clear objective. I like simple, very straightforward. I like Polyphobia just from an idea standpoint. It is very early. I'm very curious to see how things might play with each other. It being somewhat linear, I think, is somewhat limiting to the design. And then Jungle.com, I just love the 2-minute statement of you're robbing Amazon.com by buying stuff off Amazon.com. That's brilliant. But am I supposed to pick somebody now? I think, in all said and done, I think Caravan has a little bit more to that would benefit more just because they're already in Unity, and just having Pro would allow them to get a little bit further. So.
Awesome, thank you very much. So 1 vote for Caravan. Pierre, you're up next.
Yep. I really like the idea of Jungle.com, something different. I still feel that we lack a bit of irony in the video game industry, and I would have really liked to see something more from that game. Also, would have been nice to use the part, I know it's not possible, but part of actual Amazon.com. I don't want to say involvement, but being able to use their website to buy stuff of them and use them in the games. I don't know, some kind of metagaming there. Still, the Caravan game has an edge. It's more polished. It's more up to the video game standards as they are now. I feel that Jungle.com could do better using a different kind of graphics. Also, I'm a bit afraid that the interaction that the player is going to have just with the keyboard would, I mean, it's not enough. It's a bit too clunky. So, yes, my vote is for Caravan.
Thank you. Claire, please.
Caravan's really lovely. It's already has been said, it's very visually striking. There's a lot there that interests me. However, I don't know if the game's actually solved the problem of where's the gameplay in there yet. I think that looks like something they're quite struggling from. Though the Jungle guys really interest me. The procedural content, and as has already been said, the robbing Amazon is just a brilliant idea, and I think that could be explored really nicely, and I think Unity will really benefit that project, especially going across to other platforms. It's the sort of thing I could see on a touch device or something like that. So in terms of potential, I'm going to just say Jungle.
Okay, so 1 vote for Jungle.com. It is not going to be a clean sweep like it was yesterday. So Mike, it's on you to decide if it's a tie and it all gets very awkward.
Do we have a system in place for a tie?
Well, the only system that we have is I'll probably pick one.
Good enough for me. Let me speak a little bit about each one. Polyphobia, to start with, I think isn't far enough along yet, honestly, to make a decision about, especially in comparison to Jungle.com and Caravan. However, I think that I'm interested in the basic concept of polyphobia. I'm interested in this concept of exploring phobias and this emotional backdrop a little bit more. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I think you guys should keep going. Jungle.com, I guess with that I wish, Alec, that you had put a little bit more of your research and what the thing that compels you the most into this game. I mean, I know that you guys are doing it for fun, that you're enjoying the process, but I think there's a lot more that you can learn from this game as a research platform for the thing that really pushes you along personally, and put more of your own voice into it. And I think Caravan, has a very clear message. I think it's, it has this, also I think it has this weakness of being maybe overly inspired by Journey, but it has a very clear message and is trying to accomplish something and not trying to be too big. So I think it's a tough call, honestly, between Jungle and Caravan. I think they both have their strengths and weaknesses. But I'm going to make your job easy, Luke, and I'm going to swing in the final cast to Caravan.
Like Acton. He's the Florida of this panel.
So, Caravan wins. So, congratulations to those guys. We will. I'll be in touch with a license code for Unity. I'd like to thank Unity again for sponsoring the prizes for the showcase. Obviously, thank you very much to the panelists for coming along and destroying the hopes and dreams of some young students.
Can we say at least one thing? Unity is free, and you can do a fair amount in it without having Pro. You know what I mean? If Caravan is any indication, think about that. So consider that.
That's a very good point, and another shout out for Unity, which is good. Sponsors, brilliant. So thank you to everybody else. So we're going to be setting up for the next session in just a second. In fact, I think one has just started. So for those of you who want to catch Ted Spence, refresh the page, and you should be able to see it if I click that button. Meanwhile, we'll be setting up for the next session, so we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much.